Rome, 1st century after Christ. The empire has reached its maximum extent under the rule of emperors such as Augustus and then Tiberius. From the deserts of Egypt to the misty British Isles, millions of people live in the shadow of the Roman eagle. But while historians remember emperors, conquests, and senators, what is rarely told is how the common people lived: the wine sellers, the slaves, the matrons, the bakers, the retired soldiers. What did they eat? What were they afraid of? What made them laugh? In this world of marble and squalor, grandeur and dirt, we will immerse ourselves in the daily life of an ordinary Roman family, inspired by the vivid reconstructions of Robert Garland, because to understand how ordinary Romans lived is to understand what really held together the most powerful empire in the ancient world. Imagine a morning in the Subura neighborhood, a populous and vibrant area in the heart of Rome. Narrow streets, shouts of vendors, the smell of freshly baked bread mixed with the stenches of a city without modern sewers. It is here that the family of Gaius Cassius Priscus lives. Gaius is not a patrician. His commoner, a middle-aged baker who has inherited a small bakery from his father. The bakery is on the ground floor of the island, the building where he also lives with his family. He's not rich, but he has some stability in a world where most live on the edge of subsistence. His wife, Livia, is a woman of strong character and firm presence. Also from a commoner family, Livia manages the domestic economy with discipline. In Rome, although women did not officially vote or participate in politics, within the home, many were the true center of power. She is a mother, accountant, mediator, and guardian of the family reputation. They have 3 children: Tiberius, 17, who works alongside his father kneading bread and learning the family business; Julia, 14, who has already begun to receive visits from possible suitors, although Livia has not yet decided on any; and little Marcus, just 6 years old, whose biggest concern is playing with a rag doll that pretends to be a gladiator. In the darkest part of the home lives a slave, Dama, a young Greek man of about 25 years old, bought years ago on the slave market. He is cultured, speaks Latin with a thick accent, and interestingly has been the children's main educator. In Rome, it was not unusual for an educated slave to take the place of tutor. Dama reads poetry in Greek, talks about Socrates, and laughs scornfully when she hears local superstitions. Each of these characters represents a facet of Roman society. Gaius, the hard-working craftsman, caught between pride in his craft and financial insecurity. Livia, the matron whose life is woven between the public and the private. Tiberius, symbol of Roman youth who inherits a world full of unwritten rules. Julia, at the crossroads between childhood and the responsibilities imposed by tradition. Marcus, the innocent reflection of a complex city. And Lady, the slave, whose intelligence shines even in chains. This home, although fictional, is built from real stories, funerary inscriptions, graffiti from Pompeii, and the keen gaze of historians like Garland, who restore humanity to those who were silenced by the great stories of power. Rome was not just marble, senate, and battles. Rome was also sweat of the furnace, haggling in the market, children's games, and bedroom secrets. This family, like so many others, lived under the emperor's laws, yes, but even more so under the invisible pressure of social expectations, household gods, and reputation among neighbors. And while the world watches Caesar, we are going to stay here with those who walk the dirty cobblestones of the city, those who pray to the Lares before going to sleep, and those who, with luck, will see another sunrise without the fate of the empire crushing them along the way. The day in Rome begins long before dawn. Gaius wakes up before the rooster crows. The city still sleeps, but on the ground floor of its island, the bakery oven is already roaring like a hungry beast. The bread must be ready when the first customers arrive: soldiers, workers, slaves with their master's coins. Bread, especially square bread, that round one with marked divisions, is the staple food of the average Roman. Tiberius helps him with the dough, while Gaius checks the wood in the oven and murmurs a prayer to Fornax, the goddess of the oven. Yes, in Rome there was a god for everything, and bakers worshipped this minor deity, hoping that the dough would not burn. Religion permeated every daily gesture. It was not a question of faith as we understand it today, but of duty. Ignoring the Gods could mean bad fortune, illness, or even death. Upstairs, Livia has already woken up. He begins his day by sweeping the atrium and lighting the lamp of the pantry, the small domestic altar where the Lares, the protective spirits of the house, are honored. While he does so, Julia helps prepare breakfast. Stale bread, soaked. In watered wine, some olives, dried cheese. There are no luxuries. The Roman breakfast is light. The real feast, if there is one, will come later. Dama, the Greek slave, takes advantage of the calm of the morning to give reading lessons to Marcus. Although he is a slave, his knowledge makes him an essential member of the household. It teaches children not only reading and writing, but also manners, mythology, history, and philosophy. In some ways, his knowledge gives him more symbolic power than many free men. Still, his freedom does not belong to him. Julia, meanwhile, dedicates herself to housework and the loom. Knitting is not just a practical task, it is a sign of virtue. A young woman who knows how to embroider and knit is considered worthy of a good marriage. But Julia sometimes gets distracted by looking out the window, dreaming of another life, perhaps less suffocated by duty. Around noon, the streets are already bustling with activity. Vendors shout their wares: live sea worms, oil from Hispania, dates from Egypt. On every corner, the bustle. Gaius sends Tiberius to the market to buy flour and wine. While walking among the stalls, the young man comes across all kinds of characters: prostitutes wearing lead makeup, retired legionnaires recounting battles out loud, street philosophers discussing the soul with their bare feet. Rome is a symphony of languages: Latin, Greek, Egyptian, Punic, Hebrew. The empire is a mosaic, and its peoples coexist in tension and mutual amazement. Even in a bakery like Gaius's, customers can enter from all over the known world, all united by hunger and by the incessant heartbeat of the city. In the afternoon, when the sun begins to set, Livia receives a visit from a neighbor. They talk about a new Senate decree that could affect grain prices. Rumors spread like wind in Rome: a new tax, a public trial, an imminent execution. Politics is not far from daily life. Although not everyone has a voice, everyone feels its effects. The family has dinner together, sitting around a small fire. They eat barley porridge, bread, and some dried fish. You don't eat in silence. They talk, they discuss, they remember their ancestors. Afterwards, Livia tells mythological stories to Marcus while tucking him in, and Dama, from the shadows, recites some verses from Homer for whoever wants to listen. This is how a common day goes by for this Roman family. Between obligations, small, pleasures, and the hope of surviving another day, there are no great deeds, but there is a routine shared by thousands of citizens and slaves. It is this routine, invisible and constant, that sustains the colossus that is Rome. It is the first day of Saturnalia, the most anticipated festival of the year, an entire week in which hierarchies are reversed, slaves eat with their masters, businesses close, and the entire city is immersed in a carnival of excess. Gaius, like every year, closes the bakery at noon, not because he wants to, but because he must. No one wants to work during Saturnalia, and not doing so could be seen as an offense to Saturn, the god of time and abundance. The house is filled with different aromas. Livia has prepared a more generous meal than usual. There is pork, dates stuffed with walnuts, bread with honey, and mulled wine. Certain financial sacrifices have been made to afford this luxury, but these days appearing cheerful is also a way to survive socially. Being stingy at Saturnalia is frowned upon, almost as bad as not celebrating a god's birthday. Lady, for the only time in the year, sits at the table with the family. He is not wearing the drab slave tunic, but rather a more colorful one borrowed from Tiberius. He has even received a small gift, a bronze amulet representing Mercury, a symbol of wit and eloquence. The atmosphere is relaxed, strange, almost subversive. The slave laughs, the midwife listens. The roles falter, but they do not fall. In the afternoon, the entire family attends a public performance at the Forum. It is not an official state event, but a representation financed by a senator in search of popularity. In Rome, the upper classes competed not only in wealth, but in visible generosity. Offering bread and circuses was more than a metaphor. it was active politics. The square is crowded. There are musicians, jesters, declaimers, even Syrian magicians, who play with fire. Marcus runs excitedly between the feet of the adults, looking for candy that some of them distribute to the children. Julia silently observes a young poet improvising verses about Mars and Venus. The public laughs, throws coins, someone sings a Bacchic song, and the crowd joins in. Suddenly, the local councillor's entourage arrives, a small parade with torches and musicians. He comes to announce the main event of the night, a gladiator fight organized in honor of Saturn. It will not be in the Colosseum, it has not yet been completely built, but in an improvised amphitheater near the river. The news electrifies the public. Although many already knew it, hearing it officially makes it reality. Tiberius asks permission to go with his friends. Livia hesitates, but Gaius nods. She knows that denying something during Saturnalia can mean that her child is seen as different, and in Rome, being different is socially punished. The afternoon falls, and the torches illuminate a city overflowing with laughter, wine, and songs. Julia and her mother return home. Lady stands at the door, watching the night swallow the city. For a moment he seems free, just for a moment. In the makeshift arena, Tiberius witnesses his first real combat. It's not like Homer's stories, or school games. Here there is blood, there are screams, there is dense silence when one of the men falls. A gladiator raises his hand towards the audience. Some shout, "Mite," forgive him. Others, "Jugula," kill him. Tiberius doesn't know what to shout. I had never felt so much power in my throat before. It is a shared decision, but decisive. The life or death of a man, offered as entertainment. Tiberius returns home in silence. His friends laugh, imitate the movements of the wrestlers, push each other as if they were playing, but he doesn't speak. That was not a game. That night, Rome is more alive than ever, and yet, amidst the bustle, the city also seems more brutal. The Saturnalia reveals a disturbing truth, that behind the masks, the games, and the wine, Rome looks at itself and doesn't always like what it sees. The next morning, the city wakes up with the hangover of an overwhelming night. The bustle of Saturnalia has left the streets covered in walnut shells, wine stains, and the occasional person asleep between columns. In Gaius's house, the atmosphere is tense. Tiberius slept badly. On his face there are still remnants of what he saw. The blood, the screams, the masses deciding who lives and who dies just by raising their voices. During breakfast, he barely eats a bite. His mother watches him, worried, and finally breaks the silence. Was it that horrible? Tiberius raises his eyes. He nods. He doesn't say more. Lady, from the corner, looks at him with a mixture of compassion and knowledge. He knows. He's seen. A deaths before. He has felt the breath of desperation on his neck, and for that reason he speaks. That's Rome. Blood and bread, but also masks. What you saw last night wasn't just a game, it was a lesson. Livia frowns. What kind of lesson can there be in watching a man die? The same thing I learned when I was captured. Life is worthless if you have no position, citizenship, or fortune. To others, you are just a show. That comment, although loaded with truth, is uncomfortable. The family remains silent. The apparent harmony of Saturnalia begins to crack. The festival is over, and the city returns to its natural order. The slaves serve, the commoners work, the senators legislate, and the gods watch. In the neighborhood, the conversations of the day revolve around the fighting. In the bakery, Gaius listens as his customers enthusiastically comment on the deaths, the thrusts, the strength of a Thracian who, they say, killed his opponent with a single wound to the neck. Some narrate it as if they had witnessed an epic worthy of Virgil. Others tell it with an almost childish twinkle in their eyes. No one mentions that one of the dead was a slave who asked for forgiveness before the final blow. As he kneads the flour, Gaius listens and says nothing. But deep down, something worries him. His son did not come back the same. That afternoon, Tiberius runs away from home. He goes to the river. Look for silence. Think. There, he meets a group of young people who were also in the fight. One of them the son of a Greek merchant, laughs while simulating the moment of death. Tiberius, without knowing why, hits him. A dry punch. The group separates him. The merchant threatens him. "My father will know about this," he tells her, rubbing his jaw. Tiberius runs back home. His mother sees him arrive with an upset face. He doesn't want to explain. But soon a messenger knocks on the door. He is the father of the beaten boy. He comes indignant, demands an apology. He talks about honor, about punishments, about how young Tiberius must learn respect. Gaius tries to calm him down. Livia lights up. The tension grows. Finally, the merchant leaves, but not before warning, "This is how the ruin of houses begins," with children who forget their place. That night, the family argues. Livia is furious. Gaius is divided. Tiberius, silent, locks himself in. Julia stays with her younger brother. And Lady, while cleaning up the remains of dinner, whispers to herself, "Every empire that feeds on pain ends up devouring its own children." The calm has been replaced by a new kind of fear. It is not the fear of barbarians, of diseases, or even of hunger. It is the internal fear, the one that is born when structures begin to creak from within. The fear that the soul of the city, that invisible Rome that lives in its families, in its homes, in its children, is getting sick. And meanwhile, in the Senate, new laws are being debated. In the taverns, new gossip is told. In the streets, new injustices are brewing. The city continues to spin, impassive in the face of the small tragedies of its own. Because in Rome, as in every great machine of power, individual pains are barely a whisper beneath the roar of the empire. A few days have passed since the fight, and the atmosphere in Gaius's house has thickened. Tiberius barely speaks. He no longer accompanies his father to the bakery. Julia, always observant, notices the change in her brother's behavior. He has become more introspective, more distant. Even Lady, accustomed to seeing pain in silence, worries. The tension breaks when a letter arrives. A document sealed with the symbol of local authority. A small wad of wax with the insignia of the district prefect. Gaius shakily opens it. It's a summons. The Greek trader has filed a formal complaint. He not only demands a public apology, but compensation in sesterces for the physical and moral damages suffered by his son. The family does not have that amount, and they know it. Livia explodes in anger. Gaius tries to calm her, but his voice no longer has the weight it used to. Julia runs to get water. Tiberius, standing in front of his father, takes the blame. "Let me face the prefect," he says, without trembling. "I will not pay with your work for what I did with my hands." Gaius stares at him. It is the first time that he sees in his son not the child, but the man who begins to be forged with blows like bread under fire. But Rome does not forgive the mistakes of youth, much less if they hurt someone with more influence. The family goes to the forum on the indicated day. The streets are full of people. Some await trials for theft, others for land disputes, debts, or poorly documented freedoms. In Rome, the law is omnipresent, but rarely just. Whoever has a voice wins, and the slaves, the poor, the humble are barely echoes between the marble walls. In front of the prefect, the merchant repeats his version, embellished with drama. "My son was attacked without provocation, humiliated before his companions, wounded not only in the flesh but in his honor." Tiberius answers simply but firmly. He recounts what he saw in the sand, what he felt. He explains that it was not anger, but helplessness, who couldn't stand laughing in the face of death, that he didn't know how to channel what he felt. The prefect watches him. It doesn't seem insensitive, but neither is he blind to the pressures of the system. After a few minutes of silence, he dictates his verdict. There will be no physical punishment, but compensation will be demanded. Not in money. Tiberius must serve for a month as assistant to the forum librarian, as a form of discipline and public lesson. Let him see how knowledge can tame rage. Some in the room murmur, others applaud. The merchant is not satisfied but agrees. Gaius sighs. Livia holds back tears. Julia smiles shyly. That afternoon, upon returning home, the family is silent. But it is a different silence. It is not about fear, but about transformation. Deep down, everyone feels that something has changed. And not only in Tiberias. That same night, Lady sits next to the boy and hands him an old parchment. "Read it when you have doubts about what you saw in the arena," he tells her. It's from Seneca, about clemency. Tiberius looks at him, then nods. The following days mark the beginning of a new routine. While Julia continues her work and Livia reorganizes the house, Tiberius begins his work in the library. Between papyri and codices, discover a new world. Violence continues to exist outside those walls, but inside, another form of power reigns, that of ideas. The librarian, a cultured but eccentric old man, teaches him to look for meaning in texts. Sometimes they laugh at Juvenal's satires, others get lost in Virgil's metaphors. Tiberius begins to write. Brief thoughts, fragments of memories. He does not forget the face of the fallen gladiator, nor the blood. But now he observes it from a distance, as one who seeks to understand instead of judge. One afternoon, while sorting through manuscripts, he finds one that is especially worn. He opens it. It is a letter from an ancient Stoic philosopher who reflects on the soul of the empire. Rome is not its walls or its laws. It is what its citizens do when no one is watching. That phrase remains engraved in his mind. At night, he shares what he read with his family. Julia listens carefully. Lady, from the shadows, nods with a slight gesture of approval. Gaius smiles, and Livia, for the first time in days, hugs her son. Rome continues its course. But in a small house in a modest neighborhood, someone has begun to look at the world with different eyes. That night, Rome sleeps under the distant whisper of the Tiber. The city, enormous, imposing, seems to ignore the small transformations that occur among its stones. But in Gaius's house, the stillness is different. It is not empty silence, but rest after a storm. Tiberius writes by the light of an oil lamp. Julia watches him from the door in silence. Lady picks up the remains of dinner, as always. But this time his steps sound less heavy. Saturnalia is over. The masks have fallen. But what they revealed is not forgotten. In the soul of a young Roman, something new has been born. A concern, a question. What does it really mean to be a citizen in an empire that sometimes seems not to hear? And so, between bread, words, and blood, Rome lives on. Not only in its monuments, but in the memory of those who, even anonymously, dared to think differently.